You're listening to the Payments Perspective podcast, where we help you navigate your payments journey one episode at a time. WestPay supports over 800 members, from financial institutions to fintechs, through expert education, guidance, and over 50 years of payments expertise. Let's dive in.
Welcome to the Payments Perspective podcast by WestPay. My name is Jeff Duffy. I'm an Assistant Vice President here at WestPay on the Education and Events team. And this episode that you're listening to will be part one of a two-part discussion with Chris VanHuysse, BFSI Business Principal from MentorMate, and we're going to be talking about artificial intelligence. Welcome, Chris, to the podcast. And to get us started, would you please tell us more about yourself and MentorMate?
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. Happy to be here. I would start with MentorMate. MentorMate's part of TA Create, which is a global digital consultancy that helps organizations achieve their digital transformation goals. We create innovative digital products. We've got a team of over 9,000 technical experts who can help create tailored digital solutions for our clients. We specialize in human-centered design, artificial intelligence, custom software development. We do data and analytics, security, cloud, DevOps, and a whole lot more specialized services. We work in several different corners of the financial industry. Many of our clients are financial institutions, insurance companies, payment providers, and also some fintech companies. We help design and develop digital banking solutions, wealth management applications, automated loan processing, virtual assistants, fraud detection, a whole lot more. As far as me personally, you mentioned my name's Chris VanHuysse. I recently joined MentorMate as a banking and financial services business principal. And really, that's just a fancy way of saying that my phone rings when a project at MentorMate needs somebody who's got banking experience and expertise. I have a little over 2 decades of experience in the financial industry. I've primarily worked for banks and brokerage firms with a little bit of time at an insurance company. Most of my experience has been in compliance and operations roles in the financial crime space. So think AML, fraud, economic sanctions. I've spent a lot of time leading system conversions, creating new processes, and also building the teams who are going to use those systems and execute those processes. Pretty excited to help MentorMate do those same things for our clients. Also excited to be here and introduce MentorMate to the WestPay audience.
Great, thank you. Well, we're definitely excited to have you here as well. So, to get us started here, would you please begin by explaining the differences of the different types of artificial intelligence that we hear about in the industry, in the media, in pop culture, things like generative AI, that machine learning, natural language processing, as well as those large language models that we hear about.
Absolutely. So you're right. Pick up an article, read a newspaper, listen to a podcast. You're going to hear all kinds of terminology in the AI space. And I'll just start there with AI, or artificial intelligence. AI is really just the overarching concept of machines being able to perform tasks that up until now only humans could do. AI is really just a bucket term that encompasses all the other related concepts and terms. I'll start with natural language processing. That's a very basic form of AI. And NLP is just the machine's ability to understand human language and then respond in kind. I think all of us at some point have raised up our phones and said, "Hey, digital assistant, give me directions to X or play song Y." That's natural language processing at work. Going a little deeper, you mentioned machine learning. Machine learning is a subset of AI, and it's defined by the system being able to get better over time by analyzing data and without needing to be explicitly programmed for every scenario that it's going to encounter. I think I'll pause there and give a little bit of an example of how do we train machines? How do we teach them? So very, very basic example is you take a bunch of pictures of animals and you start showing them to the computer. And you say, this is a dog, this is a dog, this is a dog. And then you show it some pictures of some birds or some elephants. And you say, these are not dogs. And eventually what's happening is the computer is going to self-identify patterns. It's going to realize that all the pictures of dogs had 4 legs and a tail. And it's going to learn that non-dogs have things like fins and tusks and feathers. So eventually the machine becomes able to look at a new picture, something it's never seen before. Let's go with a turkey. And this turkey has 2 legs, it has a beak, and it has feathers. And the AI realizes that none of those traits are consistent with what it knows about dogs. So even though it's never seen a turkey before, it knows it's not a dog. So pulling that away from the generic space and moving more into a banking context, where any of us in payments, we're all familiar with fraud, money laundering, and economic sanctions screening systems. We deal with them every day. Before machine learning, those kinds of systems had to be manually created with thousands of rules. And we're probably familiar with working with our teams who manage those systems to create those rules when we encounter situations. Um, you have to tell the system, watch for this very specific criteria. And when you see that, take this very specific action. With machine learning, though, like I said, the system starts to learn on its own. So as fraudsters evolve their schemes, for example, we don't necessarily have to go back to the system and program in a whole new fraud vector. The system self-identifies that pattern, recognizes it as problematic, and it starts to fire off alerts without us ever telling it to do so. So that's a little bit about machine learning. And then a really hot topic these days is something called a large language model, or you'll see that abbreviated as LLM. An LLM is a more sophisticated type of AI. It's trained on a very large, very broad data set. So think like the complete works of Shakespeare, plus every medical journal ever published, plus technical manuals, plus works of art, really anything the trainers can get their hands on. And an LLM then is not limited to just telling you this is a dog, this is not a dog. We're now dealing with an AI that can field some pretty complex questions and answer on a very broad variety of topics. So to put that in a banking specific context, how might we use that in our world? We could create an LLM and we could feed it all of our firm's policies and procedures. And then the employee could ask the LLM questions about whatever situation that they're facing in the moment. The LLM immediately reports back, gives the correct answer for your firm because it's your policies and procedures. Now the employee is getting an answer in seconds as opposed to digging through, endless string of documents. That approach is really going to empower employees to spend a lot less time on tedious work and focus more on the real work, which is serving the client. So after LLMs, I would jump into generative AI, or Gen AI for short. Most of our listeners have probably heard of ChatGPT or maybe Claude or even Copilot if you're a Microsoft shop. Those are just examples of Gen AI tools. So Gen AI graduates from analysis and pattern recognition to actually creating or generating content. That content could be text, it could be audio, it could be an image or video, it can even write computer code. What happens is you feed the system an input, which we call a prompt, and then the system gives you a response. And I want to illustrate this. If you'll indulge me, before the show, I actually went to ChatGPT and I plugged in a prompt. I'm going to read you what I typed in, and then I'm going to read you what ChatGPT gave me back. Okay, so you are a corporate trainer working for a bank. You've hired a new employee with no banking experience, and you need to teach them about payment systems. Starting with wire transfers, please provide a brief summary description of what a wire transfer is and how it works. Use a friendly, approachable tone to help mitigate the common fears or intimidation factor a new employee might feel. So that was my prompt. Now here is what ChatGPT said. And I want to stress, I have not edited this. This is straight out of the system. ChatGPT said, think of a wire transfer as a fast, secure way to send money directly from one bank account to another, kind of like handing someone cash, but digitally and across distances. It's commonly used when large amounts of money need to move quickly, like buying a house, sending funds between businesses, or transferring money internationally. It's not something customers do every day, but it is an important part of how money flows through the financial system. That's not bad for 30 seconds of work on my part. So if we think about some practical applications of this, with just a few minutes of input from a human, a Gen AI system could actually help us produce an entire training module for our staff. That means the PowerPoint deck, companion handouts, it can even put together a quiz for the end. So just think about the time savings that can come and the quality improvements if you were able to leverage this technology for your team. And then realize that that's just one example that barely scratches the surface. Going a little bit deeper than still, the new frontier right now in 2025 is agentic AI. And that term really just refers to AI that's going from generating responses to taking action. So a lot of basic examples that are used in the industry is it can schedule a meeting and book a plane ticket and book a hotel or file a trouble ticket. In the payment space, imagine you've got a system that you're using for customer disputes. And that system can now autonomously pull the transaction logs that are going to be needed by an investigator to review that case. It could even draft up a provisional credit memo. It can even start your Reg E investigation workflows for you. So that's going to save your human beings a lot of clicks and a lot of typing, but it's also still going to leave the crucial decision making to the human beings. Another good example, I think in the payment space, I would ask the audience to raise their hands if they were here, but I think everyone would raise their hand if I asked, how many times have you ever had a situation where you've got a really important client doing a really big wire and now everybody has to drop everything and babysit that thing and shepherd it through the process?
I've raised my
Well,
hand.
exactly, right? That's every day ending in Y, right? So now imagine that you've got a system that's watching for high value payments and it's continually reprioritizing transactions. And it can do that based on dollar value. It can do that based on cutoff windows, credit risk exposure, specific client SLAs. Kind of the sky's the limit. And all of that's going to be done reliably and consistently so the human beings no longer have to babysit those things. The last term I'm going to talk about here, this isn't a type of AI specifically, but it's a term you're going to hear in pretty much any conversation about AI. And that term is hallucination, or personally, I prefer fabrication. A fabrication happens when an AI looks you in the eyes and confidently gives you an answer that's just absolutely dead wrong. Understanding how and why fabrications happen, it's important to remember that an AI superpower is its ability to find patterns in a data set, but its abilities are going to be limited by that data set. So want to jump into analogy territory here. Bear with me here. When my son was younger, we visited a horse farm and he looked up at me and he said, "Daddy, those are the biggest, most beautiful dogs I've ever seen." And it was a really adorable moment. I think anybody who's ever spent time with children can relate. But why did my son think that the horse was a dog? It boils down to his training data set. His data set consists of a lot of dogs. Just about everyone in our family has a dog. We've got everything from Chihuahuas to Great Danes, but none of us own horses, and he had never seen a horse before. He knew that dogs had four legs, a tail, and a long nose, and this thing in front of him had all those traits too. So without having any further data, he concluded that the animal in front of him must just be a really big dog. So that's exactly how fabrications happen in AI. The good news for us is both my son and artificial intelligence can learn from new inputs. They can be taught about horses to better distinguish them from dogs in the future. The lesson here is that AI systems are not set it and forget it applications, but they're living systems that can get better with more time and more data.
Yeah, I think those are a lot of great examples that you gave and really helps the audience understand the differences of all these different types of AI that we're hearing about. So thank you for that. Kind of at a more broad, higher level perspective, can you help us better understand what artificial intelligence is capable of and what it may not be capable of?
Yeah, that's in a really important context. Thank you. So there's some things that AI is really good at, and there's some things that it's really not good at. As of now, AI really excels at repetitive, tedious tasks. AI doesn't get tired. It doesn't get distracted. It doesn't need a lunch break. It's going to handle the 1 millionth transaction just as well as it did the first. Another thing it's really good at, I talked about already, pattern recognition, and importantly, speed and at scale. AI can process hundreds of thousands of transactions in a few seconds or maybe a few minutes, and then spot those relevant patterns. Good luck having a human being look at a few 100,000 transactions and spot those patterns. AI is also really good at summarizing and drafting content. So if you've got a really large document, some 300-page thing that you need to understand what's this all about, but you don't have the time to read it, you can feed it into an AI, and it'll pretty reliably give you a summary of the most important points of that document. It can also create the first draft of a document, like a customer response, or if you've got regulatory reporting forms that need to be filled out, it's really good at doing that kind of thing. Where AI falls down a little bit is when you start getting into nuances, edge cases, or anything that requires dynamic reasoning. Putting it simply, AI can't think outside the box like a human, and it's not going to ask you for clarification unless you've specifically designed the system to do that. So let's say, for example, a client sends in an email and all it says is, "Can you fix this wire?" There might not be enough to go on there for the AI to understand what the customer is really asking for. And the problem is it might just guess or make up an answer rather than asking for clarification. So when we're designing AI solutions, it's really important that we be mindful of those constraints and that we plan around them a little bit.
Okay. So you talked about its basic ability to be able to take in large amounts of data and be able to recognize those patterns and do it for the most part at that technical level. It's not, like you said, bringing in emotions or things like that. So that takes me to a place of thinking about ethics. And with the organizations and the industry, maybe it's inevitable that they need to adopt these practices for various business matters. With that, though, so what should every organization understand about artificial intelligence, and what are some effective and also ethical use cases for artificial intelligence?
Yeah, let me break that into two parts. As far as what every organization should understand, I'm going to say if you take one thing away from this podcast, it's really that today's AI is the worst it's ever going to be. So AI researchers, they're overcoming hurdles at a breakneck pace. Things that were out of reach just a year ago are firmly in hand today. Likewise, things that we can't do right this second could be here in just a few months. So understand that whatever shortcomings of AI you may have found in the past or may find right now today, those obstacles may no longer exist or may not exist for much longer. As far as getting into ethical use cases, I think about this in terms of what kind of work are we removing from the human beings as opposed to leaving with the human beings. And I really just kind of reiterate the places where AI excels, right? If you need to flag anomalies, that could be missing data on a payment, it could be potential fraud. If you need to automate those tedious, repetitive tasks, I don't think in my leadership experience that I've ever heard an employee complain when I took tedium out of their job. Going back to those written communications, drafting those communications, it could be to internal stakeholders, to customers, or routine regulatory reporting. The emphasis here, though, from an ethical perspective, is you it's the word draft, right? You want the AI to help you get started or get you a little bit down the road. You really want the human in the loop, though, before you fling that communication out the door. I think another really good use case is creating an implementation summary notes for distribution to stakeholders right after a code release. Give them that summary in just a few moments, as opposed to trying to pick through what were all of these stories that went in. And then last thing I would mention would be monitoring processes, kind of like I talked about those large value payments, looking for exceptions. You can even have the system look for staffing bottlenecks and reprioritize or notify the right people, whatever's appropriate for that use case.
Gotcha. So you talked about us needing to monitor, humans needing to monitor the AI's activity. So that leads me to my next question that I have. With artificial intelligence sometimes acting independently, how do we make sure that those human values like empathy, safety, and trust are still at the core of our experience?
Yeah, that's crucial, and I think there's probably a couple points I would turn to here. First of all, we all need to understand that AI is not an oracle that is going to give us the answer to life, the universe, and everything. When you're in the design or even in the execution phase, keep it in the front of your mind that AI is like a junior team member. Now, they're incredibly fast and they're very thorough, but they do need a clear task to perform, and they're eventually going to need some human guidance. So AI is not going to replace your best people, but if you take that intern paradigm to heart, you can build some really effective solutions that take the tedium out of the job and help your top performers focus their energy on the high value decision making. Second to that, I would say, is engaging your frontline staff very early in the design process. Any good leader can tell you that it's really important to listen to the people who are actually doing the job. So don't forget that step when you're designing an AI solution. That's really going to help you better identify those bottlenecks that AI is really good at spotting. And it's also going to help you build trust with your employees. A lot of people understandably have this fear that AI is coming for their job. Use this as an opportunity to demonstrate that your goal isn't to replace every single human being in the organization. Your goal is to help them be more efficient and more effective. Personally, I am a firm believer that AI is probably going to change every job, but AI is not going to completely replace humans. There's an analogy I've heard that kind of resonates with me. I'm a woodworker as a hobbyist, and someone told me that AI is like power tools, right? Circular saws and framing nailers didn't replace construction crews, but it did make them able to put up a house a whole lot faster, and it made the job a whole lot less grueling for those construction teams. So similarly, if you use AI properly, it can accelerate processes and free your people from those low value repetitive tasks. In short, choose the use cases where AI is going to make the work faster and more efficient, but not at the expense of human guidance or client trust. It's not about replacing people, it's about amplifying their strengths and then doing that in a responsible way. And if you'll indulge me a moment, I'll say that at MentorMate, we have something that we call an ESSR framework. And ESSR stands for Ethics, Safety, Security, and Regulatory Compliance. Our aim with that framework is really to ensure that every project that we're a part of is identifying and addressing whatever relevant compliance, risk, and safety concerns might be present. We do that by putting in security practices at every step of the way. For example, we're going to regularly assess the risks and also take a look at the corresponding controls all throughout the development cycle. So we can quickly respond and deal with any unexpected issues that are going to come up. And of course, before release, we're going to verify that all the controls and the requirements are accurate, they're safe, and they're effective. Extending that ESSR framework into banking specific things we might be worried about, we're definitely capable of handling the unique risks and constraints that are specific to the financial services industry. So anti-money laundering compliance considerations, cognitive decline detection and prevention, data isolation for SOX compliance, data handling under GDPR. Those are all things that we have in our wheelhouse. So we've got the expertise to keep your AI project in line with your values.
Great, thank you for that. So going back to what you referred to as proper usage of artificial intelligence in our financial systems, what are some ethical challenges that could emerge, and what are some proactive measures that can help us ensure responsible implementation?
Uh, So again, I'll take that in a couple of parts here. As far as challenges that can come up, both ethical and otherwise, I think one of the biggest challenges is data quality issues. So AI is only as good as the data that it's trained on, and we all work in the financial industry. It's not going to surprise anyone if I say that our data is siloed, it's messy, and it's incomplete, especially when we're talking about legacy systems. The good news is we can help you out with your data too to get you ready for an AI project. From a regulatory perspective, there's a lot of uncertainty, a lot of questions, not many answers in terms of what's going to be expected of us for regulatory compliance. But I can tell you one obvious thing that's going to draw a lot of problems is if your AI cannot easily explain how or why it made a decision, you're gonna catch some spotlight for that. We all know that regulators, they're going to have high expectations from us, no doubt about that. And then from a general trust perspective, there's a lot of hype around AI, and I think there's also a healthy amount of snake oil skepticism. The thing that we have to bear in mind is, as responsible leaders, we're not making decisions based on hype. We need to see quantifiable ROI. In the world of payments, it is just too high stakes to take a flyer on unproven technology. So make sure it's working before you put it in. Um, taking a side here for a second, and imagine you've got a system, you roll out this AI project, and it's supposed to flag suspicious wire transfers, and you're doing all the testing, pre-release, it's working great, and then you put it into production, and holy moly, it's just throwing alerts out every which way. You got upset customers, you've got relationship managers pushing back. It's not too long before the ops people don't trust the alerts anymore, and they're kind of just rubber stamping things through. And then you've got compliance and legal asking a whole lot of questions you don't want to answer. And meanwhile, all this is going on, your fraud team is so full up with these false positives that they miss a big one. And now your firm's out a whole lot of money for that. That's basically the nightmare scenario that's keeping a lot of decision makers on the sidelines when it comes to fully engaging with AI. So I think, kind of summing that up, the key is to understand that AI is not just a technical solution. It's operational, it's ethical, it's even cultural. So success is going to depend on more than just having a really sweet tool. It's going to take alignment with your data, the risks you're trying to mitigate, and all of the people end to end who are going to be involved in designing and executing the tool and the program.
You mentioned of the alerts coming up and whether or not we're looking at them and really incorporating them in our processing. What are some strategies that can enhance that transparency and accountability in using that artificial intelligence?
Yeah, I'll speak a little bit in general and a little bit consumer specific. Generally speaking, consider where human oversight is appropriate. Don't let the AI be the sole decision maker when it comes to things like freezing funds and denying payments. You also want to make sure that you're creating transparent logic and even more transparent documentation. When you're putting an AI solution in place, spend a little bit of time thinking about how you're going to need to demonstrate that transparency down the road, whether it's to an auditor, a regulator, or to your client. We've all been through audits. We're familiar with model risk management reviews. Let's apply those same best practices that we've learned from those engagements to our AI projects and see better results. I think another big one is bias. We really need to keep in mind how we're going to monitor for and mitigate bias. Um, just understand that AI systems, they learn from historical behavior, and they do that without any kind of feeling or conscience. If the data contains or reflects human bias, then the AI is going to inherit that bias, and it might even amplify it. So, real world example from the AI research world. Historically, we can all probably agree that the medical field has been disproportionately dominated by male physicians. So obviously that's changing. Plenty more female physicians in this day and age. But what researchers were finding with AI was that it was almost exclusively referring to physicians as male. So it took a lot of retraining and refining of the data to get the understanding that women can be doctors too. Just kind of going a little bit deeper on that, if your data are skewed by age, race, geography, or any other factor, the AI is going to tend to repeat those patterns, and it's not going to know that that's unfair. So the trick is you got to regularly monitor and retrain so that your systems stay accurate, fair, and aligned with your organization's values. It's really important to test the AI models and make sure that they're not disproportionately impacting any particular type of client or even a transaction type. Moving on from there, I would say that a close relative there is data protection, data privacy. I just spent a bunch of time talking about how we feed so much data into the system to train it, and then we feed so much data back into it to have it perform analysis. Working in the banking industry, that's a pretty obvious risk. So make sure that you are bringing in your InfoSec, your legal, your compliance partners right at the very beginning. They're going to help you ensure that your models are aligned to your firm's data protection policies and that you're being compliant with whatever applicable laws and regulations. The other thing, too, is identify purposeful solutions, not gimmicks. Don't just build an AI solution for the sake of putting a badge on it and saying, hey, it's an AI solution. And definitely don't rush a half-baked solution out the door. Consumers are going to figure that out really quickly. Take care that you're solving real operational problems and then be ready to quantify the value of those solutions. Pivoting more into purely the trust conversation. We're looking at our clients, we're telling them we're putting these AI solutions in place. How do we make sure that they continue to trust and build that trust? I mean, you don't need me to tell you that poor AI behavior, it's going to erode trust very quickly. If your chatbot is out there fabricating inaccurate responses, it's going to damage your credibility faster than you can expect. Same thing goes for denial decisions that are lacking transparency. Trust is going to drop also if the customer feels like they're being watched, or if they're being treated unfairly by the algorithm. On that last point, though, I want to pause and stress that that's about the customer's perception. That can happen even if your system is actually technically accurate in giving out correct information. So I think the key to all of that is that transparency is crucial. The ability to disclose why an AI decision was made, it's going to boost confidence and it's going to keep your systems accountable. And that accountability is not just to your clients, but also to regulators. Another plus on the trust space is AI can help you bring tailored alerts, recommendations, and insights to your client about themselves. And that's going to make their experience feel smarter and more relevant. So if you do that right and you deliver value to your client, they're going to deliver business back to you. A use case here, AI chatbots and virtual agents, they can provide instant and correct answers at all hours of the day, and that's going to improve your customers' perception of your firm. In this particular time that we're living in, people want to do things around the clock, and they don't want to be told, "Oh, sorry, I'm a kind of a silly AI, and I can't handle that question. You're going to have to pick up the phone at 8 a.m." The reality is, AI is either going to deepen trust or it's going to diminish it. And when it adds value in a transparent way, trust increases. And if the customer perceives your tool that it's clunky or creepy, you've lost their trust completely.
Thank you, Chris, for joining us today. And if anyone would like to contact MentorMate, their contact information is available in the description. And thank you to our members for listening in. And if you're interested in becoming a member of WestPay, please visit our membership page by following that link that is also in the description. And please subscribe to the Payments Perspective podcast anywhere podcasts are available. And please join us next time as we continue to work together in shaping the future of payments.